cannibals.
Bones and All is the newest movie by Luca Guadagnino, Oscar-nominated director a few years ago for the film Call Me By Your Name. It consists of main characters that are labeled as eaters, although they are basically cannibals. Marin being the main character, she's played by Taylor Russell, and she is put into a situation where she's kind of having to fend for herself and live on her own. She bumps into the character Lee, portrayed by Timothée Chalamet, who is in somewhat of a similar situation, although different with regards to sort of how they got to that point. And from there, the film surprisingly does not have much focus with regards to a story or plots. The closest thing being that Marin is trying to figure out who or where her mother is, because she previously lived with her father, but they had a falling out of sorts, and so her and Lee are kind of on the road, maybe looking for where she might be. That's really the closest thing you can cling onto for any sort of plot, I guess. The movie is pretty chill and just kind of goes with the flow for the most part, as we sort of just witness what our characters go through and the eventual relationship that is created and developed between Marin and Lee, which is something that I simultaneously like and kind of don't like as well. While on the one hand, with it being pretty simple, it is a very easy watch. I would have liked more out of the subplot with Marin's mother, because when we get to the meat of said subplots, it kind of goes over it pretty quickly and we just move on to the next part of the movie. And I wish that Guadagnino had lingered on that idea a little more. I would have liked to have seen what else had come from it. But talking about more things that I did like about this movie, the performances, both Taylor Russell and Timothée Chalamet are really great here, and they do a really good job at making you relate to them and feel for them, because I don't know if there are any cannibals watching this video or watched my channel ever. I would bet that there aren't, and so it's just very impressive that I actually did kind of feel bad for those characters and was sort of rooting for them at times in the movie, even though what they're doing is completely immoral and wrong, and that's maybe even stating it lightly. There's another actor as well that's in the film who I'll talk a little bit more about later when I'm talking about my issues, but undeniably the performance was very good, and it was a pleasant surprise to just see him in this movie. I didn't know he was in it. I only knew about Timothy and Taylor. I didn't see any trailers at all, so it's kind of cool. I like that actor, and I was glad to see him here. The craft, for the most part, I think was there and did work well. It looks great. The Guadagnino's direction was mostly on point, and the music, from what I can remember, was also quite good. It was composed by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. As I said before, I didn't see a trailer for this movie. The only thing I knew going into it were, other than the actors and the director, was just that there were cannibals. The cannibalism was involved in this film, so I was not expecting it to actually be somewhat of a love story as well, and for romance to be such a prominent theme here. It is, though, between Marin and Lee, and with exception to maybe a couple parts in the film that were a bit unrealistic and unbelievable, this romance did work for me, and I think a lot of that is just attributed to the performances here being so good. Luca Guadagnino's direction, while overall I think solid and well done, I think at times goes for a bit too much. I think he's trying to just experiment a little bit too much at a few different moments. I remember one specific scene where this character is running towards the camera, running after characters that aren't seen on the frame, and like there's this big music build up and then it just randomly cuts to something else. It was just kind of a weird moment in the movie, and I don't know, there are moments like that where I feel like he was just doing weird things for the sake of them being weird. And I think it would have worked better if he had just complemented the film's chill, like I said, go with the flow vibe going on throughout, which generally speaking it does, with exception to moments like that. As far as the cannibalistic acts go in this film, I like that it is dispersed throughout its runtime and it's not utilized and shown a lot. I think that is a good tactic, and it You know, it reminds me a little bit of Jaws, how the shark only pops in at the end. I would compare it to that, but it would be like that if the shark maybe also made an appearance briefly in the first and second acts. I will praise them for only showing it every now and then, but personally speaking, I would have liked them to emphasize the gore even more. Because we only really get hints of these things happening. We'll see a shot like behind someone else, behind one of the eaters eating another person, or the shot will be on something completely different and we'll just hear what's going on. You guys remember that gnarly shot in Return of the King when Smeagol is biting into the fish and you see his teeth going into the flesh? That's the kind of stuff that I wish we got in this film. It's decent gore that we get here, but I do think it should have been just a little more unhinged. And the last gripe that I just want to mention relates to the ending of the film, where there's the character that comes back who I said was portrayed by the actor that I like quite a bit. And the ending to this movie is unfortunately very generic, and looking back now, it's something that I feel like I could have predicted a mile away. Obviously, I won't get into details to spoil anything, but it's the kind of scenario where our characters sort of have everything good going for them. Everything's happy, everything's great, and then it all kind of just goes downhill really quickly because someone else comes into the picture and just ruins it all. Though I think well done and well crafted for what it was. A slight disappointment there with the ending for me. Here's a curveball for you guys. I thought this movie was damn good. I think this is probably going to be a highlight for me when looking back on this year of film that we got in 2022. A lot of stuff to like here, especially with the performances and a sort of odd mix of genres, even if I do think it is just slightly lacking in substance. Bones and All for me is a light 8.5 out of 10. It's almost an 8, but I would bump it up just enough to get that 8.5 rating. My question for you guys is, have you ever eaten human flesh? If so, what did you think about it? That's all I want to know. Don't even think about commenting what you thought about this movie. I'll just delete it. Peace out.